The starting rotation was not supposed to be a point of emphasis this offseason for the Toronto Blue Jays, but you can never have too many arms at your disposal, and some reports are coming out that the Blue Jays are interested in Blake Snell. We're not sure how interested they are in him, but they're definitely monitoring where he's going to go. So the Blue Jays could be in on the former Cy Young winner, so we'll break that down and much more in this episode of Jays Digest. What's up, Jays fans? I'm your host, Peter Vryonis, alongside host Nick Gosse. Now, Blake Snell won a Cy Young Award last season, and he was one of the best pitchers in all of baseball. And the Blue Jays had one of the best starting rotations in all of baseball. But what's been proven time and time again around Major League Baseball is that you can never have too many arms, and you can never have too many good arms. Now, there are some great starters in the rotation right now for the Blue Jays, but who's going to say no to Blake Snell at the right price tag? The Jays have been quietly monitoring his progress, or quietly monitoring his interest in free agency. So definitely something to keep an eye on over there, Nick. But Blake Snell, one of the more interesting names in this year's free agent class. We're not sure what kind of money he's going to command because he has had some down years, but definitely something to keep an eye on if you're a Blue Jay fan.
Yeah, very interesting report. Before we get into it, a quick reminder, hit the subscribe button. We're on the road to 12,000, so scroll down if you aren't already, hit the button, and let's just get right into it. Bob Nightingale said the Blue Jays, like you mentioned, have been quietly monitoring free agent Blake Snell, and he basically said among a couple other teams, I guess the Jays are kind of the mysterious team that has been monitoring him. And again, like you said, we don't know how much to take into this. We don't know how much they're actually monitoring him, but the fact that they're even in on him kind of suggests, and we heard rumblings about them being in on Yoshinobu Yamamoto. It seems like the Blue Jays are interested in starting pitching, even if that means potentially adding a fifth starter, and Blake Snell would obviously be better than our fifth. But he said, while several teams still remain engaged with Snell while seeing if his price tag drops, the Blue Jays Blue Jays in particular, have been quietly monitoring his free agency. And this has kind of been a theme for the Blue Jays, monitoring if people's prices drops. We've seen that with Cody Bellinger. We're starting to see that with Jorge Soler, all these guys. Ross Atkins is quietly monitoring and quietly waiting for his time to pounce and actually make a move. And the piece suggested that he wants around $240 million. That is a lot of money, and I suspect the Jays won't go for that unless the price drops a lot more soon.
Yeah, I want him to be a little bit louder and actually do something here instead of just quietly monitoring everybody, because it's been a little bit too quiet in Jays land. But Blake Snell, in my opinion, is a very similar situation to what we're seeing with Cody Bellinger. We're not exactly sure what kind of player we're going to get out of him, because he won the Cy Young Award last year, but he struggled with command even in his Cy Young season last year, and he struggled with command in the past, and he's had some up and down seasons. He's been elite at times, and other times he's been not so elite. So which Blake Snell are you getting? And especially for that $240 million price tag, it's a lot for a guy who you may not know what you're getting out of as soon as next season. So I'm sure some teams are doing their due diligence. I just don't know what kind of price tag is going to be attached to his name. And that's why I'm comparing him to Cody Bellinger, because he used to be an MVP. He had big time power season. Kind of got back to being that player last year, but the power was nowhere near what we saw in his MVP caliber season and even in his rookie year. So yeah, you could get a great player for $200 million, but he's going to be great for the duration of that contract. Is he going to be able to live up to that price tag? Those are the big question marks surrounding Cody Bellinger and even Blake Snell to a certain degree. So I do my due diligence if I'm the Blue Jays, but if they don't want to tie up that much money, I think they're better to stay away. And the rotation is not their problem right now. I'd rather them splurge in another area. Blake Snell would just be an embarrassment of riches at that point if they were to add a starter of that caliber. Whereas, you don't really need that. You need a guy who's going to slug 35 home runs for you and hit in the middle of your order. Blake Snell's good, but he's no Shohei Ohtani, so he won't be able to do that for you.
Yeah, maybe if they get him alongside a guy like Soler or someone else. But you mentioned it last season in his contract year, phenomenal ERA. The year before he was solid too, and then he's had a couple of 4 ERA seasons. And I've seen the comparison to Cody Bellinger a lot. Definitely makes some sense. I would say Snell has a bit better peripheral stuff and has a little bit of a higher floor. But in general, I agree. I just don't know why they'd spend that much money on a starter. That being said, if they have enough to get this guy and Jorge Soler, then maybe they go for that. That would be an ideal situation if you're the Toronto Blue Jays. But again, it's going to cost probably $200+ million unless the market drops down. But he is one of the best pitchers in baseball. He'd be a lefty pitcher. He'd be everyone else would just move down. And Gosse and Snell. I mean, we already have the best starting rotation in baseball, or at least arguably the best. Adding a Cy Young caliber player would instantly make the team way better. But you also need to have hitting. We saw last year that pitching and defense doesn't always reign supreme. And let's touch on the rest of the starters quickly a little bit here. I mean, we have Kevin Gosse. We haven't really had to talk about him too much. And you also have Yusei Kikuchi, who's coming off of one of the better professional seasons, probably the best of his career. Do you think, and do you have confidence that this starting pitching staff will be able to maintain the same level of, or a similar level of success as they did last year? Or do you think the front office doesn't think so, and that's why they're going and trying to add one more elite starting pitcher to the already elite rotation we have?
Well, a lot of our comments touched on it in previous videos that the rotation was very lucky last year, not because of their performance, but because of injuries. No one really missed any starts aside from Alek Manoah. So Alek Manoah, we know the story. He was one of the worst starting pitchers in baseball last year, and they didn't get anything out of him. But everyone else in that rotation was pretty much best case scenario. Kevin Gausman had a Cy Young type of season. Chris Bassett, 200+ innings and just fantastic from start to finish. Yusei Kikuchi, when he was out of the rotation last year, he had an unbelievable bounce back and showed flashes of being that all-star that he was in the first half of the season with Seattle when he made it. And then Jose Berrios, again, similar to Alek Manoah, he was horrible the year before, one of the worst starting pitchers in baseball that you kind of dreaded when you were sending him out there every fifth day. And then he turns it around, and he's one of the more consistent starters, not only on your team, but in all of baseball. So you had the best possible outcome from, and I don't see why they can't replicate what they did last year. They were very good. I think they're very talented. And maybe if they do bring in a guy like Blake Snell or another starting pitcher, it opens up the possibility of trading one of your back-end starters, like maybe Alek Manoah or Yusei Kikuchi, who's on an expiring deal. So maybe the Jays would spend money in one area and look to trade for another area. It's entirely possible. I think this roster has a lot of flexibility as it stands right now. But when it comes to the pitching, Nick, I don't see a reason why they can't replicate what they did last season. They're very good, and they're durable for the most part, so I'm all in on them.
Yeah, and Chris Bassett has come out and said publicly they think he's the best pitching staff in baseball. Kevin Gausman's one of the best pitchers in baseball, even though some lists have omitted him from them. But if you get even a little bit of Yusei Kikuchi back, Alek Manoah, if you get Alek Manoah back to a degree, you can make a case that as long as they stay healthy, they could even be a bit better than last year. But I don't know. It's going to be very interesting to see, and it's a very interesting report that Blake Snell is, even the fact that the Jays are even remotely in on him. But I think the biggest thing right now is just getting a hitter, because we can talk about this all we want. They need to get one of their DH, or they got to get their DH slot filled, and hopefully it is going to be in the form of Jorge Soler or someone like that, JD Martinez, whoever you want to go for, because spring training is like 35 days, 39 days away, and Ross is running out of time a little bit. But that being said, the entire market's completely frozen. Nothing has even happened over the past week or two anyways, which is very, very interesting. So any quick final thoughts before we wrap up and hope that Ross makes a move soon?
Yeah, it's been unlike any other offseason we've really seen, Nick. There hasn't been much movement. Obviously, the top dog was Shohei, and that happened fairly quickly-ish. I mean, kind of dragged on for us Jays fans because we were so entrenched into it and we were just waiting for something to happen. So the days felt like months and years even. So yeah, it's been unlike any other offseason that I've witnessed. Just not much movement going on. Not many trades have been happening. But hopefully something could get going here for the Toronto Blue Jays, and the gears could start grinding, because they do have some work to do before spring training starts. You don't need your guys to play in spring training, but obviously you'd like to get them into a few games, and you'd like to get them entrenched into your culture. So yeah, hopefully they get something done here soon, because it's been a while now and there's still a few holes to be filled here.
Yeah, and I think he will do that. But that'll wrap up the video. If you want to check out our video from yesterday, click on your screen now and we'll have you covered if and when Ross eventually makes a move.